So a few years back, we hired a part-time finance manager. He would work weekends occasionally. He was semi-retired. He was an ex-Seattle police officer. And actually, he was a New York police officer who had come to Seattle. One day he told me a story. We were talking about people and celebrities, and he says, "Oh, I have a story." And I said, "Well, what's that?" And he says, "Well, I moved to Seattle from New York after being a New York cop. And this is in the early 60s, he says. I come to Seattle and I go to work for the Seattle Police Department. I go in with my first day, and the captain hands me a map of Seattle. And he outlines in red his area that he's responsible for patrolling and says, there's your squad car, there's your map, and go out and arrest somebody. He says, now I had just come from New York. I didn't know Seattle at all. There's Seattle, there's the waterfront, and then there's West Seattle, which is obviously west of Seattle. It's its own little private area over there, and it's pretty separate from Seattle. And he says, I get over there, I'm driving around a little bit, I'm trying to acclimate myself to the area. I pull over on one of the main streets, and I'm looking at the map, and all of a sudden this car roars by me, and the guy's weaving in and out of the lanes, and I'm going, oh, my first day. I really don't have time for this. If I arrest this guy, I'm gonna be stuck inside the police station all day filling out paperwork. I'll just let it go. Well, he says, I thought I'd let it go. All of a sudden this lady pulls up next to me, rolls down the window and says, aren't you gonna do anything about that guy? He almost ran me off the road. You need to go get him. Oh, great. So I fire up the car, I turn on the lights, and I go after him. And I get him a few blocks away and pull him over. And he rolls down the window, and obviously there's the smell of alcohol. I said, so, sir, had a few drinks today? And he looks at me and he goes, do you know who I am? And I go, well, sir, no, I don't, but I'm just asked you a question. Have you had a few drinks today? He says, you don't know who I am, do you? No, I don't know who you are. He says, well, I'll tell you what, you get your captain on the phone and you tell him that you've got me. He goes, sir, I'm not going to do that. You've always been drinking. You need to get out of the car. You're under arrest. He says, no, you don't understand who I am. I said, sir, get out of the car. He gets out of the car. I handcuff him, march him back to my squad car, and I put him in the back. So I start driving. The guy's in the back going, you're making the biggest mistake of your life, buddy. You don't know who I am. You need to get on the phone to your captain right away. All of a sudden, in the back of my brain, I'm thinking, well, it's my first day. It could be somebody important, politician or something like that. Maybe I should check. But I didn't want to use the two-way radio because the two-way radio everybody could listen to. Believe it or not, back then, he says, we didn't have the communications we have today. So he said, I found a phone booth on a corner. Yeah, there really were phones out on the corner. So I call the police station. I ask the reception, hey, put me through the captain. Puts us through the captain. He says, hey, captain, I've got this guy in the back of my car. He's obviously been drinking. Says his name is blah, blah, blah. And he says, you know him. He goes, and then Al says to me, he says, there's dead silence on the phone. He says, the captain goes, where are you? I go, I give him the address, the cross streets. And he says, you stay right there and don't move. I'll be out in a few minutes. So the next thing you know, 15, 20 minutes, here's the captain, another car, and they pull up and they go to the back of my car. They grab the guy out of the back, they uncuff him, and they go, we're really sorry about this, Chris. Really sorry about this. We'll take you back to your car. Don't worry about it. He's going to take you back to your car. Don't worry about a thing. So they take my guy and they put him in the back of the other car, and they drive off and go back to where I had left the other guy's car, Chris's car. And I said, what's going on? He says, Al, this never happened. Never, ever happened. No. I'm thinking to myself, Al's telling me a story. This is a typical TV story you hear. Well, it turns out there was a childhood clown in Seattle, and he was on TV from like 1958 to 1981. He's pretty famous in Seattle. Has a statue They actually have Washington license plates with his picture on it. I think if you know who I'm talking about, we all know who I'm talking about. And it was him. I didn't realize, because he'd just moved here, who he was or who the name was. And for us kids, because I was just a kid, we didn't know who this guy's, we knew his name on TV, but we didn't know what his real name was. Nobody knew. He was always the clown, you know. I'm not going to say his name. So Al tells me, he says, so the end of the year comes up and there's the annual Christmas party. He says, so I'm working the backstage, security, arranging things, and I see a group of cops standing around, and they're all talking with this guy. And this guy's all done up in makeup, clown suit and everything else. I walk over to him, and these guys are laughing, and I hear one guy go, so he did what? And then the clown says, yeah, he tried to arrest me. He says, and they're all laughing, and they go, what happened next? He says, I don't know, but if I ever see that cop again, I'm gonna kick his ass so hard. And Al says, I just kind of like turned around and walked out the back and left it alone.
When you're buying a pre-owned car, it is critical to get a professional mechanic to inspect it every time. And so the Lemon Squad is the easiest way to do that and the most affordable. Generally within 24 or 48 hours, they can get somebody on site anywhere in the country with their nationwide network of trained professional mechanics that are going to give you a ton of pictures and a full report of exactly what's going on with this car. It's a great way to avoid scams, and it's a great way to get a very clear picture of the car that you're buying, and this ammunition can make you the shrewdest negotiator of all. It also makes the drive home a whole lot easier and keeps a little bit more money in your pocket, and I know that you'll love the results from the Lemon Squad. So check them out now at the link in the description below for a special discount and to make sure that you're buying the car that you think you are.